Hello there, I'm Karim Fazakri. You're watching All 24 News World News program live from Algiers. Coming up next in our news. Hundreds of protesters storm Iraq's parliament in support of Shiite cleric Muqtada Sadr. Biden's administration is offering convicted Russian arms dealer in exchange for Griner and Wheeler. Fed hikes interest rates by 0.75 percentage point for second consecutive time to fight inflation. Also coming up, flash floods kill over 300 in Pakistan as more monsoon rain is forecast. Hello again, those were today's top stories. First in our topical news, supporters of powerful Iraqi cleric Shiite Muqtada Sadr dance and sing after storming parliament in the capital's high-security green zone in protest at her rival's bloc's nomination for Prime Minister. Usama Ayadi has the story.
Hundreds of Iraqi protesters breached Baghdad's parliament on Wednesday, chanting anti-Iran curses and a demonstration against the nominee for prime ministry by Iran-backed parties. The majority of protesters were followers of the influential Shiite cleric Muqtada Sadr. The incident raised the stakes of the political struggle for Iraq nearly 10 months after the federal elections, as only security forces were inside the building and they appeared to allow the protesters in with relative ease.
Now the Iraqi people are asking every honorable man and every honorable politicians to hold accountable all thieves of public money. As politicians say, now from under the dome of parliament, we demand to hold all corrupt people accountable, and on top of the list is former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki.
The demonstrators were protesting the recent selection of Mohammed al-Sudani as the official nominee of the Coordination Framework Bloc, a coalition led by Iran-backed Shiite parties and their allies. The protest was largest since federal elections were held in October, and the second time Assad used his ability to mobilize masses to send a message to his political rivals this month.
From the dome of the parliament, we are the Iraqi people. We don't want you, Maliki. We don't want you, al-Sudani. We don't want any of these people. Maliki, why are you sticking to forming the government? Why is he still here? You should collect your stuff and leave the country. The people are very tired. The people collapsed. They're hungry and doing drugs. The people are fed up.
Hours after his followers occupied parliament, Assad issued a statement on Twitter telling them their message has been received and to return safely to their homes, signaling no further escalation to the sit-in. Shortly after, protesters began making their way out of the parliament building, with security forces supervising. The incident and Assad's subsequent show of control over his followers carried an implicit warning of the Framework Alliance and a potential escalation to come if the government forms with al-Sudani at the helm. Assad's ability to mobilize and control his large grassroots following gives him powerful leverage over his rivals.
To Palestine now, a group of peace activists and Palestinian protesters clashed with Zionist soldiers on Wednesday near the occupied West Bank town of Harris. The protesters were trying to block a main road near the settlement of Ariel when soldiers fired tear gas and pushed the protesters away. Most of the international community considers the settlement illegal and supports further escalation of confrontations between Palestinian people and occupation forces. Libya's oil production has risen to more than 1 million barrels per day after it had reached low levels due to political turmoil and the closure of oil fields. Libyan Oil Minister Mohammed Aoun said in a statement that oil production rose to 1.079 million barrels per day, compared to an average of 870,000 barrels per day a week ago. Explosions have been reported in the region of the Ukrainian capital Kiev early on Thursday morning. The Kiev City State Administration urged residents to seek shelter as the air raid alarm was still in effect. Russia's defense ministry said its forces had destroyed 6 Ukrainian munition depots in the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic and in Mykolaiv. Still with the Russia-Ukraine file, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Russia has extended objectives in Ukraine, seeking to claim more Ukrainian territory beyond Donbas region. He added that the U.S. has made a considerable offer to Russia to facilitate the release of basketball player Brittany Griner and ex-Marine Paul Whelan imprisoned in Russia.
What the world has heard recently from Russia's leaders is raising new alarms. Last week, Foreign Minister Lavrov said that the Kremlin's goals in Ukraine had expanded. Now they seek to claim more Ukrainian territory beyond the Donbass. This is the latest in a series of evolving justifications and ever-shifting goals. We put a substantial proposal on the table weeks ago to facilitate their release. Our governments have communicated repeatedly and directly on that proposal.
Russia delivered less gas to Europe on Wednesday in a further escalation of an energy standoff between Moscow and the European Union that will make it hotter and costlier for the bloc to fill up storage ahead of the winter heating season. The cut in supplies, flagged by Gazprom earlier this week, has reduced the capacity of Nord Stream 1 pipeline, the major delivery route for Europe for Russian gas, to a mere fifth of its total capacity. Now, European Union nations have agreed to Russian gas supplies after Russia announced another cut to deliveries. EU members agreed to voluntarily reduce gas use by 15% from August until March. Russia says the reduced output is due to a faulty gas turbine, but EU leaders accused Moscow at playing politics. More in this report.
The energy ministers of the European Union, meeting in Brussels, agreed on Tuesday to reduce their gas consumption in a coordinated manner after a new drastic drop in Russian deliveries. As Russian energy giant Gazprom decided to limit supplies to the European Union through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline to 20% of capacity due to the need for maintenance of the turbine, heightening concerns that President Vladimir Putin will use gas trade to challenge the bloc's opposition to the special military operation in Ukraine. Each country will do everything possible to reduce between August 2022 and March 2023 its gas consumption by at least 15% compared to the average of last 5 years over the same period.
Today we are sending a strong signal, not only to Vladimir Putin, who once again failed to divide the European Union, but most importantly to our citizens. Today's decision ensures we will not have to face dramatic consequences in winter, including gas scarcity or the price spikes.
In the event of risk of serious shortage, an alert mechanism will make the 15% reduction binding for the 27, but this objective will be adopted to the needs of each country. Ukraine's energy minister also participated in the extraordinary European Union meeting on winter gas supplies in Brussels and expressed his country's support for the new deal.
We have experience with Russian. Numerous times Ukraine was cut off supply of gas in the middle of winter. And this several time experience, we managed to survive. We need to stop demand on Russian gas, and we need to do this as quickly as we can.
European Union countries seek to maintain a solid front over a conflict that shows no sign of ending. They believe that the new decisions would enable the blocs as a whole to get through the winter should Russia stop all gas deliveries. If European countries don't have enough supplies stored up in time, it means certainly almost It will be a struggle to heat homes and power cities.
Russia's trying to reassure nations hit hard by the global shortage of grain. Millions of people across Africa have been left without adequate access to food because of soaring prices. But Moscow is hoping to strengthen ties with the continent that has so far not joined the West in condemning Russia's war in Ukraine. Zara Ferjani has the story.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met representatives from several African countries in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, wrapping up a four-nation tour of Africa aimed at countering Western criticism of Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. Most of African nations have declined to take sides over the war, but many of them are suffering from the rise of food and gas prices. Western nations blame the invasion for worsening food shortages in record drought-stricken East Africa. Lavrov denied his country is responsible for this global surge.
The situation in Ukraine did additionally negatively affect the food markets, but not because of the Russian special operation, rather due to the absolutely inadequate reaction of the West, which announced sanctions undermining the availability of food on the markets.
2 days before, and in his third stop, Lavrov had met Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, who for decades has courted both the West and Russia, including purchasing Russian weaponries.
Whenever issues come up, and some people want us to take positions against Russia, we say, but you people, these people have been with us for the last 100 years. How can we be automatically against them?
The West against Russia is crisscrossing Africa to win support for their positions on the war in Ukraine. Russia is blaming the Western leaders for rising food prices, while the West accused the Kremlin of cynically using food as a weapon to appeal to listeners in post-colonial Africa.
Dozens of people have been killed in a series of coordinated attacks in Mali in recent weeks. It happened as the French President Emmanuel Macron visits West Africa to discuss security on Thursday. He stopped in Benin. Anger at France's presence in its former colonies has been increasing. Melissa Noor Khimilat reports now.
Emmanuel Macron arrived in Benin with promise to invest in security as the Sahel region sees a spike in attacks by armed groups. The French president says France will work with friendly countries to overcome those challenges.
What we want to do is to build together in a very concrete way to renovation of the French presence and of this partnership and support, training equipment, support training of special forces, planned operations.
But as Macron arrives in Benin, the Malian military announced armed groups have carried out coordinated attacks on 2 military bases. The attacks came days after another attack near the capital. France was forced to pull out of Mali after 9 years of leading a joint operation with regional forces to root armed groups in the Sahel. This has left the former colonial power struggling to position its troops elsewhere in the region. His host Patrice Talon was hoping for a robust French support for his small West African country, which is also seeing a steady rise in attacks by armed groups. Instead, his human rights record is coming under scrutiny.
In Benin, there are no political prisoners. No one's detained in Benin for their political opinion, but people are detained for having acted, for having committed offenses or crimes in the political field. That's true. So it could be that in the future, in my time or after me, that acts of pardon and amnesty will be enacted towards these people. It's possible.
Macron's tour coincided with Russian Foreign Minister's Africa diplomatic charm offensive, and he wasted no time to blame Russia's invasion of Ukraine for creating food and energy shortages across Africa. His next big stop was Guinea-Bissau, in a country whose political stability continues to be tested.
Guinea-Bissau welcomed for the first time a French head of state on its soil. For this third and final stage of his African tour, French President Emmanuel Macron was greeted upon his arrival at Bissau Airport by the President of Guinea-Bissau, Umaro Sissoco Embalo. Terrorists have shot 15 soldiers and 3 civilians dead in a coordinated attack in the southwest of Mali. The terrorist insurgency is seriously raging in troubled Mali. A statement said the assaults on military camps in Sokolo and near Kalumba were repulsed by almost 50 militants being killed. A third attack near Mopti caused no casualties.
À Kalumba, dans le cercle de Mourdia, région de Nara, une attaque...
In Kalumba, in the circle of Mouridia, Nara region, a terrorist attack was contained and vigorously repelled early this morning. The death toll on the friendly side is 12 dead, including 3 civilians from a road construction company. An evaluation of this attack are ongoing. The air pursuit has allowed attacking terrorist logistics bases under vegetation cover in the vicinity, thus reducing the enemy's potential.
Réduisant ainsi le potentiel ennemi.
The Nigerian army says it has found 2 more of the female students abducted by Boko Haram militants from a secondary school more than 8 years ago. There was global outrage when Islamists seized nearly 300 girls in Nigeria's northeastern town of Chibok in 2014. Most of the victims have either been freed or escaped since then, but dozens remain unaccounted for. The National Salvation Front, a coalition of opposition parties in Tunisia, accuses the electoral body of falsifying voter turnout figures, claiming President Kais Saied's referendum failed. A referendum was held on Monday on a disputed new constitution which grants vast prerogatives to the President of the Republic. Most of the major opposition parties, including the Islamist-inspired movement Ennahda, boycotted the consultation. The American Central Bank, Fed, announced on Wednesday a 4th consecutive increase in its key rates, rising them by 0.75 of a point to place them between 2.25 and 2.50%, and plans to continue this movement against inflation, which remains very high. Hossein Barkan with the full details.
The U.S. Federal Reserve on Wednesday raised its benchmark interest rate by 75 basis points, the second in a row with same magnitude, as elevated inflation showed no clear sign of decreasing. The Federal Open Market Committee, the Fed's policy-making organ, decided to raise the target range for the federal funds rate to 2.25 to 2.5%. The Fed previously raised rates by 25 basis points in March and then by 50 basis points in May.
Today, the FOMC raised its policy interest rate by 0.75 of a percentage point and anticipates that ongoing increases in the target range for the federal funds rate will be appropriate.
Faced with inflation that is not slowing down in the United States, Jerome Powell, president of the U.S. Central Bank, warned that the U.S. will continue in this path in an attempt to curb inflation, and added that spending and production data showed a slowdown in consumer spending has also fallen.
While another unusually large increase could be appropriate at our next meeting, that is a decision that will depend on the data we get between now and then.
In turn, the White House affirmed on Wednesday that the United States is not currently in a recession or in a pre-recession. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre declined to comment on the Fed's monetary policy decision after it raised rates by 0.75 of a percentage point.
The way that we see is that we are not currently in a recession or a pre-recession. And look, we're going to let the Fed do its business. We're going to let them continue to be independent.
Stocks on Wall Street closed solidly higher after the Federal Reserve decision. With the November midterm elections nearing, Americans' discontent has diminished President Joe Biden public approval ratings and increased the likelihood that the Democrats will lose control of the House and Senate.
Still in the U.S., in a sudden reversal that sent shockwaves through Capitol Hill, U.S. Senator Democrat Joe Manchin has announced his support for a spending package backed by President Joe Biden, one that hikes corporate taxes, tackles climate change, and lowers the cost of prescription drugs. Manchin and Schumer said in a statement the bill would pay for itself by raising the minimum corporate tax on big companies to 15%, ramping up IRS tax enforcement and closing a tax loophole for the ultra-wealthy. North Koreans marked the 69th anniversary of the armistice that ended the 1950 and 1953 Korean War with a mass dance party at an outdoor gala on Wednesday. In a video provided by the North's official news agency KCNA, people wearing masks and traditional garb danced at Pyongyang's Kim Il-sung Square. North Korea calls July 27th its day of victory in the Great Fatherland Liberation War. Rescuers used boats and helicopters on Wednesday to evacuate hundreds of marooned people from Pakistan's southwest, where floods triggered by monsoon rains have killed 337 people across the country. According to the National Disaster Management Authority, the rainstorms have damaged bridges, roads, and about 4,000 homes in Balochistan province.
We
were stuck in the flood water for the last 3 days. Now we crossed the water by foot. We have lost our houses. No food left for our children.
Our team has reached one of the villages which has ground access, and another team is on its way to recover the villages from the area.
Residents in the northern Philippines woke up terrified on Thursday after a powerful quake killed at least 4 people and injured more than 130 the day before. The 7.1 magnitude quake rattled the northern Philippine island of Luzon on Wednesday morning, damaging homes and buildings, including heritage structures and centuries-old churches. Seismologists have since recorded close to 800 aftershocks.
The earthquake was very strong. I could see buildings moving. Everything's moving. Our plates were breaking. Our lights were swaying. We were terrified. Even soft drinks in our fridge fell out because the tremor was so strong.
Sri Lanka, still blundering with its economic crisis, announced its biggest partner, including China and India, for more credit lines. However, Sri Lanka's debts stand as a barrier for more financial aid, Islam Sid reports.
Sri Lanka's economic and political woes keep getting worse, as trade with India is threatened to halt due to fears over receiving payment from Sri Lankan partners, who scuffle to pay off foreign debts, which are estimated at more than $51 billion, including China, Japan, and India lenders, the latter seen as the third largest trade partner of Sri Lanka. India shipped items worth over $5.8 billion to Sri Lanka between 2021 and 2022, the figure which is anticipated to drop.
Sri Lanka's government was the first to fall. There have already been protests related to food and fuel prices in at least 17 countries because of inflationary pressures. Across these past 75 years, India has always shown itself to be a friend to the world's poor.
On the other hand, China, Sri Lanka's third biggest lender, has promised to provide credit lines and emergency loans to Sri Lanka to deal with its financial crisis. China has financed Sri Lanka with more than $5 billion over the past 15 years for a variety of projects, including roads, a port, an airport, and a coal power plant. However, critics claim the money was spent for ineffective projects with minimal returns, of which China denied.
Now that economic conditions have soured, Beijing has promised lines of credit and emergency loans. This is critical, since Beijing is estimated to hold at least 15% of Sri Lanka's foreign debt.
It's worth mentioning that Ranil Wickremesinghe took office as a president in parliamentary vote after Rajapaksa quit as a result of mass protests and anger over his mishandling of the country's economy, which has been suffering continuous shortages of fuel, food, and other necessities.
A big pink diamond of 170 carats has been discovered in Angola. and is claimed to be the largest such gemstone found in 300 years. The diamond was found at the Lulu Alluvial Diamond Mine. According to Lucapa Diamond Company, the pink gemstone is the 5th largest diamond found at the mine, where 27 diamonds of 100 carats or more have been found.
We have recovered a large pink diamond, one that has obviously not been seen in a number of centuries, we believe. We do mine a very unique and special resource that is famous in our industry for recovering some large stones. But when you recover a large stone with that is pink in color, obviously the excitement is certainly elevated.
Well, with this, dear viewers, we reach the end of our program. Thank you for tuning in to our channel. And for more news, follow us on all 24 news platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Bye for now.